Doop. Boop. All right, and we're back. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about early warning signatures for potential neurodegeneration, why it's really important if you identify any symptoms of anything that's related to vagus nerve dysfunction, that it is super critical that you start to take action immediately. This is not something that you can just wait around on and hope that it'll get better. It's really not the kind of thing that you want to do. So before we do that, we're going to do our simultaneous squeeze. So if you'll join me here, you just follow my instructions. Ready? 3, 2, 1, breathe in. Take a sip of air. Hold and squeeze. And slowly exhale for 5. Very good. Cool. So now that we're in a learning mode and your hearing has changed, let's crack into it. First thing I do want to do is just post here in the chat the link to what is a website page on our website, vegushub.com, called Symptoms. What are the most common symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction? I will want you to review that list and see what is on there that you may be experiencing. The way that modern medicine works is they typically look at a symptom like difficulty swallowing as like an issue of swallowing. If you have an issue with reflux, it's an issue of your stomach. If you have an issue with stomach function or digestive intestinal function, they're going to see that as a stomach intestinal issue. But the way that I have begun to see it, after having worked in the vagus nerve field for 6 years, having overseen close to, believe, 4,000 direct one-to-one calls with people from all over the world, offering consultations over the phone to help them identify, is there a vagus nerve issue or not? That's the clear question we're trying to answer. And if there is, what you can do about it. It's really just 2 specific parts of these calls, and have actually gone on to work with a number of them through our coaching program. And so I have learned a lot, and what we've identified these are clear-cut symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction. So let me just start off with kind of what is the nature of today's video. I'm going to post this here in the chat. So we're talking about the ticking time bomb. Why we've identified early vagus nerve issues can ultimately lead to brain function loss. So what is first and foremost, I guess the ultimate result of not taking any of this stuff seriously is fatal. Your body, your health, if your vagus nerve fails, things will fail in your body, and that can lead to death. But once that's happened, there's really not much you can do. But there are things you can do now early on before it develops into something fatal that you can do to always walk yourself back from the edge. And that's a big point of why we're doing this today. Because as we are streaming, this is to the audience of the living, as far as I'm concerned. That's my main target audience, are people who are alive and not people who have passed on to the other side. So today's video will cover the vagus nerve, which is also considered the wandering nerve. This plays a critical role in regulating various bodily functions across your whole system. Your vagus nerve controls your heart rate. It controls your digestion. It influences your mood and your cognition, your memory, your ability to think, your ability to focus. It's an essential component of your overall picture of well-being, of health. However, when early signs of vagus nerve dysfunction are ignored, it can lead to severe consequences, including what I'm terming brain function loss. And this is serious. So in this video, we're going to explore the importance of taking symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction seriously ahead of time, not waiting around for it to magically heal itself, but being proactive and doing things now to prevent what's typically known as a chronic health situation. This would be a disaster. As you being the real subjective liver of the person who is living the chronic health situation, it is going to be subjectively experienced as a disaster. There's no other way to put it. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm having a situation. You're going to be like, this is a nightmare on Earth when this starts going south. So first section here of today's video is going to be talking about the link between vagus nerve dysfunction and chronic health issues. So how are these interconnected with each other? A big long-term consequence, an initial short-term, medium, and long-term issue of vagus nerve dysfunction is categorically going to be linked to inflammation in the body. High levels of inflammation that are sustained over time are the number one driver of death in the world today. If there's anything that keeps people capped at the years of 86 years old, and we have the average lifespan is getting shorter and shorter, actually. It used to get a lot higher. We're now seeing a drop in that number. So people are actually dying on average earlier than their grandparents today, which is not good. So we see inflammation as causing damage to the body and to the brain. So low-grade inflammation has been linked scientifically to several chronic health conditions such as depression, obesity, and Alzheimer's disease, and vascular dementia. It is crucial to understand that these conditions are not merely isolated incidents, but they're actually a result of the continuous state of inflammation in the body. Developing type 2 diabetes is a result of inflammation processes being driven in your pancreas. We are no longer able to produce insulin naturally, and your B cells in your pancreas start to fall apart. The cells will die. And then there's nothing to produce insulin in your body any longer. That is a very big issue. And people are even considering Alzheimer's to be considered to be type 3 diabetes. You can develop type 2 diabetes, insulin loss, high-grade inflammation, all the time. You develop Alzheimer's. And more people are developing Alzheimer's than we ever thought were possible today. It's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So let's talk about keeping inflammation levels in check. This is really important. So in order to prevent a chronic health disaster associated with vagus nerve dysfunction, it's imperative to keep inflammation levels low. Fortunately, there are ways to stimulate, or as I like to call them, sonicate, right, the vagus nerve and spleen on a daily basis, which can help achieve this goal. So by doing so, by sonicating your vagus nerve and your spleen, you can effectively keep stress and hormone imbalances in check, which can lead to reduced inflammation throughout the day. Super, super powerful stuff here. So what does that look like, right? So if we're talking about stimulating or sonicating the vagus nerve and the spleen, what does that look like? So of course, there are various techniques and there are various methods that can be used to activate the vagus nerve. There's natural practices like breathing and humming and yoga and meditating and making sweet, sweet love to your soulmate. All those things can do it. But in lieu of those things, lack thereof, sometimes it's helpful to ensure that there's not an option that you're going to go a day without stimulating your vagus nerve, okay? So this is why we want to talk about having access to things that can sonicate the vagus nerve, okay? So there are various techniques, obviously, but one method that we do at the very beginning of these videos is called the Valsalva squeeze. That's what the simultaneous squeeze is. It is a form of stimulating your vagus nerve through breath retention, holding and squeezing around your diaphragm. That does activate your vagus nerve. This also promotes relaxation throughout the body and can lower inflammation levels pretty substantially and pretty quickly. So additionally, engaging in regular physical activity such as yoga or Tai Chi can also stimulate the vagus nerve and reduce inflammation. But when we talk about getting the spleen to be stimulated, when we sonicate the spleen with ultrasound, we see a huge reduction. Within about 4 hours of treatment, inflammatory levels drop. Even the tumor necrosis factor alpha levels will drop if you measure your blood. So sonication of the vagus nerve is probably one of the most important things you should have on hand at all times in your life. Even me at 35 years old, myself at 35 years old, I also am sonicating my vagus nerve in important parts of my body because I want to stay young and healthy forever. I don't want to get old. I don't want to become a 96-year-old crippled curmudgeon, okay? So I'm doing things proactively right now to enhance my health so that I can survive and live a long, healthy life. I think in 10 years, hopefully I won't have aged more than 3 years in terms of biological age over the next 10 years. So we're doing stuff to kind of mitigate the growth rate of the body. And these are things that can tangibly be done at home without breaking the bank either. So it doesn't have to cost a bunch of money. So another thing that we always encourage people to do, right? Because if you're like, okay, you got my attention, I do not want to develop neurodegenerative disorders. I understand that I should keep my vagus nerve sonicated. And let me just make it clear, guys. I'm saying sonication. I'm not saying stimulation. So hopefully we don't get the question anymore. I'm going to start saying sonication of the vagus nerve more and more rather than saying stimulation of the vagus nerve. Because most people, this is just a secondary thing to the topic of the video, but just to get a sense of how people think and their brains work, they see something that says your vagus nerve is overstimulated. So stimulating the vagus nerve must be the wrong thing to do. And rather than trying to dissuade them of it or argue with them about any of that stuff, because what is it? It takes a second for misinformation to spread across the internet. It takes 3 months for it to be corrected, and you only can correct about 30% of what people initially heard. So we're going to talk about sonication, okay? Sonication is the best pathway forward. You really don't want to be generally just like thinking about stimulation of the vagus nerve as a increasing activity. But when we talk about sonication, we're talking about modulating activity, putting a tuning fork to your vagus nerve and regulating it the same way you would use a Tibetan singing bowl to bring your body's energy into harmony. That is sonication. So that is the domain that I prefer to work in. So let's talk about the role of diet and lifestyle, obviously. So there are some things you can do now to prevent the ticking time bomb. Because once you lose your brain completely, it's pretty difficult to come back from the brink. Now, there are things you can do. You can actually direct sound waves with ultrasound right into your brain, and these are being explored as treatments for Alzheimer's. So there's always that, right? There's always money in the banana stand, so to speak. So in addition to specific techniques like breathing and yoga and sonication, maintaining a healthy diet and lifestyle is crucial for keeping your inflammation levels low. There's mountains of evidence that show that getting daily exercise, walking, resistance training, consuming anti-inflammatory diets rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins can also help to reduce inflammation in the body. Avoiding processed foods, avoiding excessive levels of sugar and unhealthy fats is equally important. So this means avoiding palm oil, avoiding different types of really cheap cooking oils can be really, really helpful in giving you good optimal fats. I always recommend extra virgin olive oil on everything. That's what you should be using in all foods that you possibly can. Drizzle olive oil, really high quality olive oil, on everything you have, whether it's on rice, whether it's on chicken, on salmon, on veggies, cooked vegetables. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the best things that you could be taking for your overall health. That is a fact. So another thing, when we talk about lifestyle, we're also accessing managing stress levels through practices like meditation, mindfulness, and adequate sleep, which can significantly impact vagus nerve function and overall well-being. So by prioritizing self-care and adopting a holistic approach to health, we can effectively prevent chronic health issues associated with vagus nerve dysfunction. So, lifestyle, sonication, exercise, all these things can ultimately protect you from the inevitable, really tragic outcomes of a sick vagus nerve. You don't want to have a sick vagus nerve. So in conclusion, early detection and intervention of vagus nerve dysfunction is paramount to preventing brain function loss and chronic health disasters. By taking symptoms seriously and implementing strategies to keep inflammation levels low, we can safeguard our overall well-being, stimulating the vagus nerve and spleen, sonicating the vagus nerve and spleen through various techniques, coupled with a healthy diet and lifestyle, can go a long way in ensuring proper brain function. So, also, we believe that can prevent the onset of debilitating disorders like depression, obesity, and Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so let's prioritize our health and take proactive steps towards a vibrant and inflammation-free life. Managing your inflammation is the number one thing that you should be doing to keep your spirit around on this planet for as long as possible. Okay, so good. So thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your time here. What I want to do now is bring it up to some questions. Do you guys have any questions about anything I discussed here today? Feel free to ask that on YouTube or Facebook. I'll stay on for a few moments to try and address any questions that you guys have. In the meantime, I do want to talk about sonication. So sonication is a process by which you perturb, you massage, you do these kinds of little minor oscillations, like minor little massage techniques to the vagus nerve through sound. And the sound has to be really small. The sound has to be really, really, really small. And it has to be done in water. And this is called sonication. And when you sonicate the vagus nerve, what you do see is regulation of metabolism in the cells that make up the vagus nerve. So one of the biggest things that we have to try to make function are the mitochondria in your body. So the mitochondria in your vagus nerve produce ATP, which is what comes from sugar consumption, sugar metabolism. And ATP goes into your cells, and it's like the powerhouse of your cells, of your neurons. And anytime your mitochondria break down, then you start to experience some pretty severe issues. There was actually there was a study that I think I bookmarked just today. So many incredible things I've seen. Let's see. Oh yeah, so there's one article here about aging and disease, and it talks about the microbiome, gut-brain, vagus nerve axis. Dysregulating can lead to Alzheimer's disease. And there are many pathways by which this can happen. There's diet, there's environmental factors, but generally speaking, if you have gut dysbiosis, if you have a lack of mucus in your intestinal lining, that can drive the development of Alzheimer's. You don't want that. That will shrink your brain. It will really hurt things all around your body. So this is no good. Cool. So yeah, that was one of the studies that we just saw published this week, actually, as well. So yeah, gut-brain health, your gut microbiome, keep that healthy by eating non-processed foods. Don't eat shit. Just don't eat the garbage. You really got to not do it. If you're not feeling your best, it's likely because you're consuming junk. Partially, it can really have a lot to do with the garbage that you're putting in your body. Okay. So very cool. Well, thanks guys so much for watching. Super grateful to be able to put this out there. We get a ton of people watching replays on the YouTube since it's a big public platform. So this is what we call evergreen content. When you put something on YouTube, people may see that video in 2 to 5 years from now. So this kind of stuff is so cool, and I'm so excited to be able to point back and say, see, I was telling people about this years ago. I was warning people about this such a long time ago. So that is always really helpful and really powerful. Totally ego trip too, but it's fine. I don't really care. All right, guys. So thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your taking your health seriously. That is one of the biggest things that I could ever wish for you, is that you never have to experience the consequences of severe high-grade levels of inflammation. Okay? Awesome. Well, thanks, Shar. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, TK. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. And I will see you guys later. I'll see you again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Don't drink and drive. Don't do anything stupid, okay? Stay good out there and live with some systems, okay? I'll see you guys soon. Take care of yourself and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.